Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is one I am very excited about. This is my 2023 mid-year reading recap. If you all are interested in seeing what books I want to share with you all that I read in the first half of the year, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, this is going to be my mid-year reading recap for 2023. A lot of people also call this the mid-year book freakout tag video. I did the same video last year. I really enjoyed filming it. I'm very excited about this video. I'm excited to share the books that I've picked for the different prompts I'm going to be using. These prompts are the same ones I used last year. They're the same ones a lot of people on YouTube use. And so let's get started. The first prompt is the best book I've read so far this year, and that is an easy one for me. It is Once Upon a Tome, The Misadventures of a Rare Bookseller by Oliver Darkshire. I got this as an ARC on NetGalley earlier this year. I read it, I fell in love with it. I think about it often. If people ask for book recommendations for me, I a lot of times will say this book. And the wild thing about it is this book is nonfiction, and I am not a nonfiction reader, but I love the way that this book was written. It's written more like a fiction. It feels like a fiction story, and it was just a true delight, and I cannot recommend it enough. The next book that we're going to talk about is actually two books because the prompt is the best sequel I've read so far this year, and I couldn't pick between two, so I used two. The first one is the best actual sequel in a series, and that is going to be A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I read the ACOTAR series this year and I really enjoyed it. This book in particular I was very nervous about because it is absolutely ginormous, and I will say that the first 200 to 300 pages of this were a little iffy. The main character in this, or the character perspective that we get in this story, is that of Nesta, and she is not the most likable person to start out with, but somehow, some way, Sarah J. Maas makes you fall in love with her by the end of the story. There's so much character development that happens, and I ended up just really enjoying this book. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The only other book that's been rated that high in the ACOTAR series for me is A Court of Mist and Fury, and honestly, I liked this one a little bit more than A Court of Mist and Fury. I also decided to put on here the best book that's like from an interconnected standalone series, and the one I chose was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. So the first book in this interconnected standalone series is Part of Your World, and then the second one is Yours Truly. I fell in love with Yours Truly. I gave it 5 stars. It is just so lovely. The characters are great. What she does with the male lead is so awesome. Like his story, his background, the way that she describes what he goes through, like it is so fantastic. I loved this story. The next prompt is a new release that I haven't read yet, and I decided to pick Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I have loved both of Ali Hazelwood's novels that I've read. I also recently read her short stories and really enjoyed them, so I'm super excited for Love Theoretically. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I'm hoping to get to it by the end of the summer. My most anticipated release for the second half of the year, the first book that I actually thought of for this prompt is The Atlas Complex, but unfortunately that doesn't come out until January 2024, so I couldn't pick it. But then I ended up realizing that I'm super excited for A Curse of True Love by Stephanie Garber, which is going to be the third book in I guess it's called like the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After earlier this year and loved them, and I'm super excited for the third book in the series, especially with the way that the second book leaves off. This is coming out in October, on October 24th, I think. My biggest disappointment so far this year, this one unfortunately was not a it wasn't one that I had to think a lot about. I knew what I was going to pick for this right away, and that is Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I read It Happened One Summer and Hook, Like an Sinker last year. I love both of those books. I gave them both 5 stars. And so I was very, very excited for this new release from Tessa Bailey. I picked this up and read this right away when it came out in February. And unfortunately, I just didn't connect with it. It just didn't work for me. And I ended up giving it 2 out of 5 stars. It does have a second book in this series, or interconnected standalone series, which recently came out. And honestly, I don't even know that I'm going to pick that up at all, because I was just so disappointed with this one that I don't feel like I want to spend more time in this world. The next book is, or the next prompt I should say, is The Biggest Surprise. And for me, that's actually a book that I read in June, which is A Most Agreeable Murder by Julia Seals. This one I was very nervous about. I got this as an ARC through NetGalley. It seemed Regency era based on the cover, and it was, but it was so good. It was easy to read. The murder mystery aspect to it was super fun. The characters were really great, and I just absolutely love this story. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I honestly was nervous I just wasn't going to be able to get through it, and I ended up loving it, and I want more from this author. I want this book to become a series. This was 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely my biggest surprise so far this year. The next prompt that we're going to be talking about is my favorite author that is new to me. I made this new to me and not just favorite new author, because I don't really know how many books I've read this year that are first books from someone. So for me, new to me is just easier, and I decided to pick Abby Jimenez. I've read 2 books by her so far this year, Part of Your World and Yours Truly. I love both of them. They were both 5-star reads for me, and I'm leaning as if I'm going to put a book cover here, and I don't need to put a book cover here. So let me just sit in the middle again. But anyways, I loved Abby Jimenez, both of her books that I've read so far. I know she has several others. I need to read all of them, and I can't wait to read all of them. My newest fictional crush is the next prompt, and I ended up picking several people for this. The first is a duo, the duo of Cassian and Azriel from the ACOTAR series. The A Court of Silver Flames, we actually get a lot of Cassian's point of view, which was fantastic. I loved that in the story. I've always really enjoyed Cassian and Azriel, so getting more of a deep dive into Cassian as a character was such a welcome treat for me, and I'm just hoping that future ACOTAR books are going to do the same for us with regards to Azriel. Honestly, I've always just been super intrigued by Azriel, more so than probably any other character in the series, and I need to know more about him. I want more about him. I want his inner dialogue. I also really want a romance between him and one of the other characters in the story, so I'm hoping we get that in the future, because I just adore him, and I adore Cassian too. The next for fictional crush is going to be Cal from The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley. I just loved him in this story. He was such a wonderful male lead, and I thoroughly enjoyed his character. And then the last one is going to be Daniel from Part of Your World. I just really loved him. I also really love that that story deals with an age gap romance where the female is older than the male. That was really interesting as well, and I loved that he wasn't intimidated by that or by her. He just embraced her. So yeah, those were my fictional crushes. The next prompt is newest favorite character, and I ended up picking Don Tillman from The Rosie Project. I read this in June. I fell in love with this book. I fell in love with Don Tillman, a character. This is a series as well, and I'm really, really hoping to read the rest of the series this year, because I just loved this character so much, and I want to read more with him. The next prompt is book that made me cry, and there are several that I could have chosen for this. The Rosie Project that I just talked about being one of them, but I ended up picking Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I read this early in the year, it might have been January even, and I still think about this story. It is disturbing, almost sickening. It's not for everyone, I'm sure, but I couldn't put this book down. It held my attention the entire time, but it was also incredibly sad, and I definitely cried multiple times while reading it. The next book we're going to talk about is a book that made me happy, and that was an easy choice for me. Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I absolutely love Sarah Adams. I started reading her last year. I've read almost her entire backlog. I do think she has 2 Regency era romances that I haven't read, but everything else I've read and I've loved. I could not wait for Practice Makes Perfect. This was definitely one of my more anticipated releases for this year. It lived up to everything I wanted it to be. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars and made me super happy. Next is The Most Beautiful Book I Bought This Year, and that one was also an easy choice for me. I saw someone post about this on YouTube and I couldn't believe how gorgeous this book was. I wanted to get this book anyways, so I found this version of it, and that is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. This is the version from Fairy Loot, and I was able to get on their website and order this. I think it's absolutely stunning. I love the black and gold together. I love that the gold is a foil, and it also has these gorgeous sprayed edges, which I really, really love. I really want to read this book. I read 2 of Olivia Blake's books so far, and I've really enjoyed them, so I definitely want to read this one as well as some of her others. I know she has a book, I think it's called One for Your Enemy, that just came out that I want to get my hands on as well. And then the next is books I need to read before the end of the year, and there's several of them, so I'm just going to kind of rapid fire go through them. One of them is Alone with You in the Ether, which I just talked about. Circe, Fourth Wing, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that is part of the Hunger Games series. I read that series years ago and loved it. This is being made into a movie that's coming out, I think, in the fall, so I want to read the book before I see the film. Us Against You and the Winners, which is part of a series, the Beartown series by Frederick Backman. The Hobbit. I've been reading more fantasy this year. I've been wanting to read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings for a really long time. They intimidate the heck out of me, but I think I could do it. And then Addicted to You, which is the first book in the Addicted series. I really want to read the Addicted series. I'm hoping to get to it this summer. That's that for that prompt. I do like to add in some honorable mentions at the end, just books that I've read in the first half of the year that I didn't talk about in any of my prompts that I would highly recommend. And so those books would be The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie by Rachel Linden, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. That's a really cute romance, but to me it's almost more than that. It's a lot about personal growth and development, which I really loved. The book of poetry called Love by Atticus, I gave that 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed that. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. That was a 5 out of 5 star read for me. That is a historical fiction. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This is a mystery thriller. It's a 5 out of 5 star read for me. It is dark academia at its best. It's so fantastic. Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. My mom gave me that for my birthday and I picked it up pretty quickly and loved it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. This is a romance that actually comes out in July. I believe it comes out July 11th. I was fortunate enough to get an arc for this one and I read it and I absolutely loved it. I cannot tell you all how good this book is. It's super interesting and I desperately want you all to read it. Please pick it up and read it. It's so good. A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. That is a mystery thriller that was recommended to me for my Instagram challenge. I loved it. I couldn't put it down. I had to figure out what was going on and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book is another mystery thriller. It's a newer release by Riley Sager, The Only One Left. I give that 5 out of 5 stars as well. And that is going to be it for this mid-year reading wrap-up for 2023. If you have not read any of the books that I've talked about, read them. They're all so good. If you have any book recommendations for me, please don't hesitate to put them down below in the comment section. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.